hope Paul he hasn't overdone it on those lower slopes.
Looking a little bit calmer now, I think, as they come under the 5 kilometre banner. That's just about 3 miles to go. Millar staying in the slipstream of Bouvattier, letting him set the pace for a little while, because he knows that the road is going to lift itself up in not too distant a future, and it's going to be very, very hard, and that's where he's going to have to think about making a move.
There's the second group on the road. It looks to be maybe about 25, 30 riders strong. So somewhere today, despite this little escape and the big riders not taking it very seriously, somewhere today there's 100 riders gone missing in the Tour de France, and they must be many, many minutes down one way or another here in the Pyrenees.
Just a piece of information for you there, Phil, if you wanted. It was, in fact, not a rider who went over the edge of the cliff there. It was one of the team cars, the PDM team cars, and there's nobody injured apart from the car.
Well, that's good news. This looks like Hernandez setting the pace. The yellow jersey of Pedro Delgado, just keeping out of trouble, not pushing himself, but just making sure he can see the road ahead, keeping away from any simple tumble, rather, a touch of wheels that might put him on the floor and lose in the Tour de France. I keep thinking, you know, Paul, you remember way back to 1971 when Luis Ocaña was 10 minutes ahead in the lead, and in a heavy rainstorm crashed and he lost the Tour de France?
Well, that's something you must always think about, and Hino was always very philosophical about that when he had the yellow jersey in his great years in the 70s and early 80s. They used to say to him, well, Bernard, we're coming out to the mountains, you've won the yellow jersey now, you're going to take it all the way to Paris. And he always used to say that I haven't won the Tour de France until I get to Paris, and it's a long way to go yet.
Absolutely right. Wise men, and it's usually the champions that make such remarks. They know the risks they take, and they know the challenges they face every day. And now the big challenge that this rider is facing, Robert Millar up there, the little frail man on the left, is to how is he going to get rid of these 3 limpets that have stuck on him all the way since he made his attack. Bouvattier has now come into his second win, that's for sure, because he's dishing out a little bit of pain here to Robert Millar. Benotti, who's looked dead on the bike for the last half hour, is seemingly recovering as well. And I don't quite know what to say about Massimo Garotto at the back there, because he's looking extremely good too. This is not by any means yet an automatic victory for Robert Millar. Well, that's just to confirm what we said a little while ago, that the PDM team car was the vehicle that went off the mountain and no riders involved, and that we understand indeed that no one was hurt, and that's good news all round. But it must have been one terrific shock to leave the mountainside sitting in the back seat of a car. Up towards 4 kilometres to go. Just 4 kilometres, Paul. He's leaving it late because there's a little plateau before the kick. You were right when you said it's not a very hard finish.
Well, it isn't, and he must be thinking, trying to cast his mind back to that stage victory in 1984. But he looks so much stronger. If you look at the gear that Millar is using compared to the smaller gear that the other riders are using, he's obviously working out in his mind. Look, a quick glance across there to Benotti to think, well, I've got rid of you a couple of times before, I'm sure I can do it again. As we're coming up to the last 3-4 kilometres, Robert's got to be thinking soon about making a move, because in a situation like this, it's just too risky to leave it to a sprint finish.
All the riders now out of the saddle. The pace has forced them to now make the effort for the finish. They must be feeling extremely tense and nervous. They know that one of them now is only a couple of miles, not quite a couple of miles in fact, away from the first prize, which of course, as every time, is a motor car. Bouvattier has kept the pace high at the front, so this group has got to be closing in, but it has absolutely no chance now of catching those 4 leaders. It'll no doubt pick up 1 or 2 of the original 13 breakaways and probably push them to one side, but they're not too worried now. All the time the pace has been made by Delgado's team up this climb. Ternice on the far left in the white. I think it's Ronan Pensek also sticking his nose in that blue hat on the far left now. But all the riders here, as they come up towards the top of this small climb before they got the final one, are a long way back. Pensek possibly seeing his name written on the road there at the top of the Col de la Trappe. They still have the climb of Guzet Neige to come. Millar, of course, and his 3 rivals are almost now in the last 2 kilometres. This has been a great day in the Pyrenees for the British riders. It's been something of a routine day for Delgado. He desperately wanted this, as I'm sure everybody did. They can't keep on going at it hell for leather all the way to the finish. And if you take a look at the profile for tomorrow, then you're going to see a very different Tour de France again. It climbs 3 first category mountains tomorrow, 2 ore category. That means they're higher than the first category, and 1 second category in a stage of about 112 miles. So that's why the leaders are resting. Tomorrow will be another day. And that's why Robert Millar here, now 101, has chosen this day. He figured that would surely be the case of the leaders. They might well relax, and he had to go for it today. He's ridden such an attacking race. I hope now he hasn't just done it a little bit too much, and that somebody else in this group are going to take the prizes away from him.
Well, these are the kind of races you get the day after a rest day, because although the race started very quickly this morning, the first hour they did something like 27, 28 miles an hour again. It was the kind of day when the break moved, when it had actually gone. It didn't go easily. It went over the 4th category climb earlier on in the race, that the riders were then prepared, when they'd taken a bearings and found out who was up there and found out there was nobody dangerous, they were quite willing to let that break go away.
There's the main field. Well, the leaders of the main field, at least, all under escort by the man in yellow and the boys in blue, the Pedro Delgado's Reynolds team. A rider who wasn't readily accepted in Spain, so he rode for a Dutch team. Now, you bet your life, he'll be the Spanish hero. And the 2 stars of Holland, Paul, because we've had the crowds here. They're under the 3 kilometres banner, by the way, here now at the front. The 2 Dutch boys, Turnís and Rooks, have ridden a great Tour de France. They expected to really take a packet in the Pyrenees. They'll be rather pleased that the stage today has not been quite so hard. But it has certainly been hard for these 4 because they've made the race. And Garotto must be doing the best ride he's ever done in his life in the mountains, sitting here at the back, number 4. Venotti on the far right, the Italians at last making an impression on the Tour de France. They don't have a great tale of history in the Tour. Robert Millar in 2nd place. When he came round this corner a few years ago in 1984, he was alone in the lead and sailing to victory. Now he's got 3 major problems. Once again, switching back. I'm just wondering, in fact, whether we swept up a lot of the guys in between the race now, because we keep going back to the main field. I think there's only about 4 or 5 stragglers in between. Delgado again coming to the front. He looks hardly out of breath here as he follows up the leader. His teammate, Injuran, I think it is, looks over and sees that his leader's safe and sound. So let's get on with keeping the tempo high, and Delgado will look after himself. Bowie to the left there in that yellow System U jersey. Pensek on the far right. There's no doubt now that this group has no chance at all of bringing back Millar's group. Millar's group are going to fight out that finish. We're still in double figures, no confirmation in the last few minutes, but we believe about 10 minutes is still the gap. Here we are now. This is, I hope the cameras now don't keep switching back for views of Delgado, because the race is right here today in the Tour de France. Garotto surely is going to think of something soon. Bouvatier is stepping on the gasworks a little bit. The spectators come and giving a nice dousing of water. Remember, Bouvatier is a Frenchman riding for a Spanish team, and the Spanish and the French flag there tells us so. We've also got 2 Italians here, and for a change, 1 man from Scotland, Robert Millar. The odds were on Millar, but Paul, I'm not so sure now.
Well, it's interesting to know that Garotto, although he's moved to the back a little bit further, he never moves very far away from Robert Millar's wheel. And I think if Robert does make an attack in the next kilometre or so, the first man who's going to try and respond to that is Garotto, because although he's dropped to the back here, he's keeping a very close eye on Robert Millar's back wheel. Bouvatier looking to it looks as if he's suffering a little bit now, rocking the shoulders about as confirmation's coming through that this lead isn't coming down at all. It's still 11 minutes and 6 seconds. Robert Millar in the middle there, looking very, very easy still for the moment, and trying to remember where the steep part of this climb is, so that he can make a move and try and get rid of 1 or 2 of these heavyweights.
Bouvatier looks again as though he's beginning to struggle. He's made the pace all the way up Guzet, Neige, and Millar's leaving him there to make it. We're not too sure quite what to think of the man in white there, Massimo Garotto, as once again we switch back to the group, which is now 11 minutes and 6 seconds behind on the road. Millar picking up 11 minutes, but it really won't matter. He'll need a lot more of that. In fact, he needs something like another 34 minutes before he would be considered a danger again. to the yellow jersey of Delgado. No, Robert Millar is going for the stage win today, and that would redeem him a great deal in everybody's eyes because he's a brilliant climber. Water being thrown by the crowd. They must have gone through gallons of it today in what is the hottest day in the Pyrenees in the Tour de France for many, many years, in fact. Now they see the jumbo screen there, the big television screen straight ahead, so all the crowd has watched this drama on the final climb, just as you have at home. Now, who is going to make the move here? Because Millar doesn't look to me yet as though he has the legs to put in the attack. We keep switching back to this group, and I wish we wouldn't, because sooner or later somebody in those leading four are going to make the move now. Nobody is interested for a change in the race leader, Pedro Delgado. It's at the front where the action is now. Here we are now, back with the leaders. Bouvattier, he's doing a great ride, and Millar in second place, looking for it, I think.
Millar just changing his gear there as he looks down to make sure everything's right. It can't be very long now before he tries to make his move, because the road's getting that little bit steeper now. A little bit of encouragement for an English spectator at the side of the road. He's waiting now, moving alongside Bouvattier, and I would think he's really waiting, calculating for that just split second when he's got to make that move. Maybe just after one of these corners, because the gradient gets so steep in these corners, and Robert looks a little bit over-geared there as he's coming round the outside of Bouvattier again. He's waiting his time. He's got to make a move soon, because leaving it to the sprint, even for a finisher like Robert at the top of a mountain, is just too risky. And Vanotti looks as if he's slipping slightly off the back there with this last increase in gradient, and you can see now that they are slowing down a little bit.
Well, the spectators are shouting into the ear of Philippe Bouvattier. Had they touched him, they might have got him disqualified, but they didn't do that. They've just shouted him on now. Millar's on the left. Vanotti is the one in trouble. Massimo, his big frame there, is lunging around a little bit. He may too be in all sorts of trouble. It could yet be a two-man race. This is the bend where they're going to have to, the crowd strain forward here. The crowd, we can't even see what's going on now. Is Robert Millar going to win this stage? He's the one that left. Bouvattier finding strength from somewhere now as Robert Millar tries to make the going.
Millar was there shouting the motorbikes away, Phil, as they were getting in again too close. That would have been the place for him to attack, and I think that's what he wanted to do. And you saw him there waving with his hand because the motorbike was just too close for him to make his move around that corner. And I would think he's soon going to have to think about getting away around one of these corners as he puts his hand down and changes his gear again there.
What a climax to the stage of the Tour de France, the first one in the Pyrenees. Now we're in amongst the barriers, so the crowds can't come in now. We're nearly at the finish of Guzet Neige. Bouvattier and the big danger man, Massimo Garotto, is there. Millar has been forced back at the kilometre into third place now. He's going to have to dig very, very deep into his reserves. And Robert Millar is going to have to produce something special here. He goes for his gears, Paul. It's still possible, surely.
Well, it must be, because he's changed it now to his slightly bigger gear. He's looking around, checking to see where Vanotti is. He's got into the last place, so this is the position from where he can surprise the other riders. He knows this finish. He's been here before, and I would think very, very soon we could see Robert, as he's checking his gears again, making sure that that lever is tight and it won't slip onto the little ring. He's changing his gears again, just keeping everything correct, making sure everything's in the right place. And I would think very soon now, and in fact this looks as Garotto closes him in. He was going to make a move there, and Garotto just closed the door on him slightly, and he's in a bad position now because Garotto would see where he's going to move from.
Well, Bouvattier also made a mistake there. His legs almost locked up, and Millar almost by default has found himself in the lead on this bend. The two rides, Garotto gets the inside, but to me, Garotto is climbing to his limits now. This is going to be a race between Robert Millar on the left, Philippe Bouvattier. Bouvattier has somewhere found this strength. He's always been seen as something of a failed Frenchman, having to ride for a Spanish team, but he's only 24 years old in his third Tour de France, and this will go down as his greatest win if he gets it, of course. Millar, when he sees that flag, might say, no, I won here, I'm going to win again, as he comes up towards the summit of Guzet Neige. Garotto, I think, is in trouble. Bouvattier starts the run. 300 metres to go. Philippe Bouvattier is now committed. Millar has got to grab that wheel. He slips the gears into top. 250 metres now. Robert Millar, I think, is losing the stage. And the policeman almost took Millar into the derivation there. And somebody's gone off course, totally ruined by it. Well, the policeman, in fact, was telling them what to do, and that was correct. They thought the policeman was sending the cars off course and went straight on. And now Garotto is here. Bouvattier has gone. Millar is now in second place still, and all of a sudden, Massimo Garotto is winning the Tour de France. I've never seen that in my life. They set the leader off course. Garotto has won when he didn't have a hope, and Robert Millar is home and dry in second place, and Bouvattier has been robbed of a stage, and that is so sad for the Frenchman. It wasn't the fault of the policeman. He was indicating go left. The riders read that as a diversion for the following team cars, because every day they always have such a diversion.
Well, just exactly what happened when he came into that derivation with just 200 metres to go.
Yeah, Bouvattier was leading out the sprint, and Garotto was already lost, and he went straight ahead in the deviation, and I went with him.
But really, if it had come to the finish, you would have won. It was quite certain that you were going to win that stage. You had it in your mind.
I was going to win the sprint, no problem.
You must be quite upset about that.
I'm understanding.
Are you going to try and sort something out about it tomorrow?
We'll see what happens tomorrow.
How do you think it's possible for somebody to send a rider the wrong way?
I don't know.
So the last 300 metres then for Pedro Delgado, and what he's done is absolutely unbelievable. He's broken away from all the men who matter in this Tour de France in the last kilometre of the climb. They've been unable to contain him all the way to the finish. So it's almost like a ride of honour for Delgado as he races up to the finish. All of the men behind him are losing time now. So on what seemed to be a quiet day for the leaders of the Tour de France, Delgado is going even further ahead as he comes to the finish of Guzet Neige. He really has demonstrated to everybody now he is the man of the Tour de France. He was the man of the Alps, and now he is the man of the Pyrenees, although he finishes 8 minutes 43 seconds behind Garotto and Robert Millar. And this was a situation when the Tour de France went completely wrong, right on the finishing line. Robert Millar goes straight on, ignoring the signal by the gendarme, and when you get dropped, then the chances are you make the right decision, because Massimo Garotto comes through, makes the turn, he goes on to win the stage. The policeman throws his arms up in disgust, and Robert Millar will finish in second place. This is Stephen Rooks crossing the line now, the second overall, 9:35. He lost almost a minute there of his lead, of his second place rather, behind the leader Pedro Delgado in the last 2 kilometres. And on the borders of his own country, Spain, Pedro Delgado has continued what he started in the Alps over the weekend. He's now down in the Pyrenees, untroubled today. In fact, to the contrary, he even gained time over all his major rivals to keep his lead in the Tour de France. Well, we've just heard, in fact, that the winner, Garotto, has refused to take the winner's prize today, and the car has gone to Philippe Bouvattier, who crossed the line in third place, but indeed really was the moral winner today.
Yeah, wasn't he, Justin? A terrific gesture by Garotto, but the record books will show that he took that stage today. Let's have a look at the stage finish then. Garotto won, Millar in second place, Bouvattier, Vanotti, Guéant and Stavenhagen. Sean Kelly, incidentally, 63rd today, more than 13 minutes adrift. Sean Yates, 16 minutes back, and Malcolm Elliott, nearly 20 minutes back. Overall, no change in the top 6 names. Delgado, Rooks, Bauer, Parra, Herrera and Tunis, but Delgado putting something like nearly 41 seconds into Stephen Rooks today, his closest challenger. Well, disaster for Robert Millar at the finish. You could see just how upset he was as he crossed the line, thumping the handlebars. Well, when he'd had time enough to calm down just a little bit, he once again joined Paul Sherwin.
Was it in the back of your mind to try and get up there today?
Yeah, I knew I had to be in the break when it went. Because we were going to take 5-10 minutes, and when we went down the other side of the descent really fast, we were sure it was going to split, and I knew that was that.
When you got to 2 or 3 kilometres to go on the climb, it looked once or twice as if you're trying to wave the motorbikes out of the way. Were they getting in your way when you tried to attack?
No, I wasn't trying to attack, but if they were almost stopped in all the corners, it was crazy. You couldn't breathe anymore. You get the impression that it's a motorbike now race, not a bike race.
When you came to the finish, I mean, it's not really the sort of thing that should happen in the Tour de France, that you get sent the wrong way, is it?
That shouldn't happen. In any race you get in, you go the wrong way. It was really badly indicated, and I think if we came up there again, it would happen again because the gendarme are standing on the wrong side for us to go to the left.
So, I mean, what's happened today, does it get you mad to want to come back with revenge for for tomorrow's stage?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. It'll take a while to recover mentally from it. When you see yourself going to win and then that happens to you, I haven't had a lot of morale in Tour de France this year. And, today doesn't help.
No, I'm sure it doesn't. Robert Millar, our guest in the studio this evening, the Australian Alan Piper, who's ridden 3 Tours de France, ridden all over Europe as a pro for 6 years. Have you ever seen that happen before, Alan?
No, I haven't. Not in such a crucial stage of the race. I haven't seen that.
Let's have a look at it again as we talk. Can you understand what happened?
Well, from looking at this, I think that Bouvattier made just a mistake. He didn't realise he was going for the line, and he didn't realise that he had to turn off. And obviously, he didn't look at his book, because here you can see, you've just seen the policeman signalling the right way that they should go. And I think Millar, probably being a man who could win this stage, probably looked at his book and realised that he had a turn just before the finish, but just followed Bouvattier. And
Girotto, of course, capitalises. You talk about looking, there's Millar just popping out around the bottom end again. You talk about looking at the book. You've got a little map in front of us here, which is exactly the same that the riders will have had, the same information, yeah?
That's right. Well, below this in their tour book, they have a small graph of the last 2 kilometres, and here they have a blow-up of the last 500 metres. And here you can see that the street goes straight ahead, but that's in a dotted arrow, and that's meant to be for the cars that are coming up. And here you can see the very short turn there of the last corner, so it's unmistakable. It's not a mistake that they should have made.
So the only reasonable excuse for Robert Millar then is that he was sat on the wheel of a rider who maybe hadn't looked at the map because he didn't expect to win the stage.
That's my thoughts there on the matter, yes.
OK, let's look ahead to tomorrow. It's to be 17 miles, but look at that profile. There are 3 first category climbs en route, 2 out of category, which means they're tougher still, and just for good measure, 1 second category. Altogether, the riders will be climbing peaks totalling 9,664 feet. The overall classification, Pedro Delgado almost arrogantly put time into all his nearest challenges yesterday.
Left Saint-Giron this morning, facing a long, hot ride into the Pyrenees, the last day in the mountains. And the first